The latest quality of life survey by SBM Intelligence has ranked Kano State as the best place for Nigerian children to live and grow. This is not just about statistics, it's about where families feel safest, where children have access to care, and where everyday living is most affordable, which is a surprising twist for many. For years, Lagos and Abuja have been seen as the go-to destinations for opportunity and modern living.
Yet this survey suggests that when it comes to raising children, Kano outperforms them. The findings highlight strengths in safety, childcare, access, affordability, and even electricity reliability, areas where other states, including some of our wealthiest, are struggling. This raises big questions. Are we overvaluing income levels and underestimating the importance of community safety and affordability? What does it say about the future of family life in Nigeria if Kano, with modest incomes, is delivering a higher quality of life than states with far bigger economies? Joining us for this discussion is partner at SBM Intelligence, Cheta Nwanze. Good morning, and thank you for joining us, Cheta.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It was a bit of a surprise, you know, when we typically would think of that. I don't know that we easily would think that Kano would have scored the highest. We would assume that states like maybe Lagos or Abuja, other states, but Kano scored highest on safety. Can you share with us what specific policies or community efforts made this possible, and maybe how other states can replicate it?
So it was also a surprise to us when we're analyzing the data. I think it's important to point out that this is a perception survey, so we're not looking at any official figures here. We went out into these states, and it's 8 states of the 36 in the country. We went out into these 8 states and asked people what they think about certain parameters. We had 15 different parameters, and it was done across 2 surveys. So the earlier survey was in January, which was about power. And then the second survey was in May this month, which was basically about quality of life. So looking at the data, it wasn't the same set of people we asked. It was a total of 633 respondents across both surveys, so which gives us a margin of error of about 4%. Now, basically, what came out in Kano was that there were so many people who are modestly satisfied with the way with their lives as compared to Lagos, as an example. And I think Lagos is the one that we'll talk about because that's our primary residence. The main thing that came out in Lagos is on affordability. Lagos scored the lowest on housing and daily cost of living. Kano basically topped the rankings in terms of safety, childcare, and grid supply. The main weakness in Kano is low incomes.
Wait, so let's get it straight, Cheta. Kano tops. What are the 3 indices you used or SBM used?
Safety, childcare, and grid supply. And to answer the question directly, one of the things that Kano has done, for example, they've reached an agreement with neighboring states with regard to security. So they have taken security seriously. And to be honest, it actually shows in the news. Think about it this way. While a lot of states around Kano, and you just had Madam E previously talking about insecurity, just look at follow the news. You will find that Kano is almost an island of relative stability in a region, the Northwest, that has a lot of problems. Kano and Jigawa, it must be said. But when you think about neighboring states, Katsina, Kaduna, Zamfara, Bauchi, which was also in the survey, they have all sorts of insecurity problems. It doesn't seem to touch Kano nearly as badly as it does neighboring states.
Does this mean that Lagos State is not on that list? And what makes Kano far better, aside from these 3, in terms of safety, childcare, and, like you said, grid supply? What's the education like? Was education also added to this indices?
Education was a part of it, and a lot of the women felt that their children were getting decent quality education. The big problem that Lagos has is that things are priced out of the reach of the average people. When we went out into the field, we were very careful to ensure that we talked with people across all income groups. that was something that we took into cognizance. So we talked to people in high income groups, middle income groups, the middle class, and then low income groups. And one thing that came out was aspiration levels. So especially across the middle, so in Kano, going back to Kano, and it looks like we are going to keep going back to Kano. In Kano, many people within the middle class or middle income levels were quite satisfied with the quality of education that they were getting. In Lagos, almost everybody in middle income groups was dissatisfied with quality of education and would prefer better, but they have been priced out of it. So that's something that needs to be taken into view when making this discussion. I think it's also important to point out that one of the things that we took into account, a question that we asked was relocation intent. Okay, if you are able to, if you can, if maybe work is not holding you down, will you leave the states that you are currently staying in? And in that particular score, the state that everybody wants to remain in is Oyo, but closely followed by Kano. While the state that almost everybody, 90% of respondents in that state would like to leave or are very likely to leave or are likely to leave is Cross River. For Lagos and Anambra, it was 50% roughly. So half the people in both Lagos and Anambra say that if the opportunity arises, they would leave. So I think that's something that is very important. Again, I think in the 21st century, we cannot divorce power supply from quality of living. And it was only 10% of our respondents in Kano that said they get fewer than 8 hours of grid supply per day. So that's also a very important aspect of it. The people in Kano feel that they are doing better, or that they are doing okay in terms of power supply.
All right. I think another question to ask is childbirth. One would assume that in Lagos, access to childbirth, or in several other parts, or the wealthiest, seemingly wealthier states, that access to childbirth would be easier, more readily available.
Or childcare.
Childcare, sorry. Thank you for that. Childcare would be easier and readily accessible.
So this is probably where the role of community comes in, because childcare is not, there's this old saying that is common to so many cultures on our continent, which is it takes a village to raise a child. So it's not just about, one thing that you will say for Lagos and Abuja especially is that they've become a lot more nuclear in terms of behavior. We are becoming more Western, for want of a better expression. So a lot of people still have access to house helps, which they pay for, but increasingly it's not community, it's not people, it's professional house keeping, if I'm to use that expression, not people who are genuinely, in many cases, it's not a grandmother, it's not a cousin. So again, I think it's important to point out that this was a perception survey. This was us asking people in those states how they feel. And we made that clear in the report. We're not looking at official records or anything of the sort. So I think it was about 4% of Kano's, 80% of Kano's respondents who felt that they had good community support when it came to childcare. And when we did the score weighting, it was about Kano had the highest score when it came to that childcare thing. Another thing that is important to point out is safety after dark. Kano had the highest score in terms of safety after dark. So people, when you go out of your house, are you comfortable with your children playing outside after it's dark? Kano had the highest score by far. And that particular metric alone is a metric that is not particularly well looked at by a lot of people. Would you, the two of you, would you be happy to leave your kids outside the gates after it's dark?
No, definitely not. And that brings me to this question. We're in Lagos, exactly, and Lagos is known as the center of excellence. And if Kano can achieve all of this nice things with modest With modest means, what policy shifts should federal and state governments prioritize to improve the quality of life nationwide? And let's zoom into Lagos, because they boast of the biggest IGR. They're always banding big numbers. The economy is bigger than that of several West African countries. But the quality of life, which is one of the most important indices, is quite low. So what can be done to address this?
So I would say that Lagos specifically I would go back to a survey that we did quite a number of years ago, and this was a Lagos only survey. It was for clients, and it was basically about transportation, and we interviewed people in Badagry at the time who were working in Victoria Island. So they would essentially, so there was this, and one of the saddest stories that came out is a story I've told. I mean, I've definitely told Joe that story before. Was a family that we interviewed. The oldest kid at the time was 12. So this was in 2018, 2019. The oldest child was 12 at the time, and there were 4 children. Both parents were working in Victoria Island. So they would leave the house on Monday morning early and then stay with friends during the week and then return home on Friday after work. Now, these are untold stories that happen quite a bit in Lagos because of traffic gridlock. And recent increases in transportation costs as a result of things like the war in Iran have not helped. So Lagos needs to come up with interventions that directly help people, possibly ways to improve tax rebates for things like solar panels so that people will have better power, so that those who can, we need to come up with a way to take people off the roads, take as many people as we can off the roads. So remote work should become more of an option. Of course, this will have to be done in conjunction with the mobile companies to improve things like telecommunications quality. And then, of course, like I said earlier, the rebates for things like solar panels so that people will actually have power. Because the quality of life can never be good if you spend 4 hours a day in traffic. That alone impacts your quality of life. So with Lagos, I mean, there are friends of mine in Abuja who call Lagos traffic star. With Lagos, the first problem is traffic. And with that traffic comes all sorts of environmental hazards that actually have an impact on people's health. So a lot of these things are actually chain reactions because of one failure in the system. So this is a Lagos-specific problem. Of course, the very short-tempered nature of many people in Lagos, which probably leads to the insecurity perception that, oh, you can't leave your children outside dark, which has been confirmed by all 3 of you. It's something that should be taken care of. And yes, I would add myself to that list. There's, I mean, when I was growing up in Benin, my parents would not panic if we were outside past 7 p.m. I mean, and of course, there were no mobile phones those days anyway. But now, 6 p.m., you're already looking for the kids. Like, where are they? Where are they? Where are they? So that's something that needs to be taken care of. It was striking that it was Kano and Ibadan, Kano and Oyo, that actually had that perception where people felt that they could leave their kids outside. There was relative safety after that. And I think it's important to point out that the field work for this was completed after before the recent events in Oyo State. So there's a possibility that could have colored perceptions if the data was collected after that incident happened.
Thank you so much, Cheta Nwanze, for speaking with us, partner SBM Intelligence. We're going to have you back, whether we like it or not, maybe in a few months' time to review if it has changed. But I kind of agree with some of the indices that have been used here. But then again, like we always say, Nigerians will have to decide for themselves what they will do with this data. But thanks for putting the data together, and thanks for joining us to shed more light on it. Thanks, Cheta.
Thank you for having me.